Okay, we're live. All right. Hello, everyone, and thanks for joining us. We are live on Women Who Lift Israel with a special guest, Gabriela Estrada, also known as Gabi. Hi, Gabi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
So, to intro everyone to our group, my name is Sarah. I'm the co founder of our community. We are a women only Facebook community focused on empowering women through strength training. And we started these live interviews because we wanted to be able to give all of the wonderful women in our community plenty of inspiration, motivation, advice, and tips from professionals and athletes in the field. And I'm so excited to have this conversation with Gabi today. For those of you who don't know, Gabi is a dedicated and passionate advocate for girls and women in movement. She is the program director for Fast and Female, which is a Canadian charity with a mission to keep girls healthy and active in sports. Yeah. Gabi is currently pursuing a master's at the University of Toronto in the Faculty of Kinesiology and Physical Education. And she is also the founder of Girls and Women in Motion, a community group in Canada that looks to provide safe, inclusive, affordable, and accessible movement-based programming to girls and women. And also, Gabi coaches a women's soccer team at the University of Toronto Scarborough. So, honestly, Gabi, all this is just so badass.
Thank you.
And such important work. And before we jump into the interview questions, can you give our community a little bit introduction about yourself, where you're from, what do you do, and how did you become so passionate about being an advocate for girls and women in sport?
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much, Sarah. And thank you so much for having me here, and excited to talk to whoever's listening out there. So as mentioned, I'm from Canada, in Ontario, from a town called Scarborough, which is part of the larger Toronto area. I was born and raised here, but my family is from Guatemala. So my parents immigrated here from Guatemala years back. I'm just about to turn 30, so it's probably about 35 years ago. And I was born and raised in Scarborough ever since. My dad played baseball in Guatemala for the national team. So the first introduction I had to sport was through playing baseball, which I hated so much. And so eventually he took me out of it, and I did things like gymnastics, swimming, dancing. And then I started playing soccer because I learned it in school and was playing on the playground, which was my very first introduction to the sport. And then just really loved it and kept playing, asked my parents to put me in a league, and played. And it's been a sport I've been really passionate about ever since. And it's funny because even reflecting recently, I realized that the reason I actually started coaching was because I couldn't afford to play in the league anymore and hadn't registered. And the league that I was playing in, the coordinator had reached out and said, "Are you registering?" And I said, my parents don't have the money to register me. So he's like, "If you want to play, I will cover your fee, but you need to coach." So he's like, "You need to coach the younger girls team." So I said, okay. So I started coaching. So that was my first introduction to being involved. But it wasn't until university where I started to learn more about sport and the different like transferable life skills and beyond having fun and being active, kind of the main things that come out of sport. And so I started looking more into sport and getting more involved, started a small girls program, started kind of coaching, doing things like that. And then when I graduated, I started working for the athletics department at the university that I was at, and was then coaching and running a girls program on the side, and then working in athletics, and wanted to do a better job at just being a better coach and a better programmer. And so for those of you that don't know, Toronto in general is very diverse of different racial backgrounds. We have a large immigrant population as well. And so I looked at all the girls that I was surrounded by, and they were very diverse in their racial and ethnic backgrounds and religious backgrounds as well. And I went to look at reports to help me to just figure out how I could be better, how I could do better for the girls and for the women I was working with, and saw that none of the reports looked at anything other than gender, being girls and women. So I got really frustrated at that, became really passionate about it. And then that led to me going back to school, getting involved with other organizations. So it was like a journey, but it came through work and play that I ended up becoming really passionate about it.
Amazing. So as we mentioned in your intro, you are the program director for the Canadian charity Fast and Female. I actually really love that title. I don't know who made it up, but it's really catchy. Can you talk to us a little bit about the charity and the work that you do for them?
Yeah, absolutely. So Fast and Female, like you mentioned, is a Canadian charity. It was founded in 2005 by Olympic gold medalist Chandra Crawford. So Chandra competed in the Olympics years ago, I think in 2006, and won in cross-country skiing. And in 2005, she started the organization to start to create events and spaces for girls to be active in, but to also meet role models. And so the organization's been around for 16 years now. And our mission is to keep self-identified girls healthy and active in sports. And so basically what we do is we work with partners across Canada and work with girls and young women across Canada, where we look to create girls-only environments where the girls get a chance to meet local role models or role models from across Canada. And so we use the acronym REAL, so Relatable, Empowering, Active Leaders, to what our role models are. So it's anyone from being a high performance athlete to a gym coach, to a strength trainer, to a firefighter, to a nurse, anyone.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really, really great. So we run events and programs where the girls get to meet each other, get to meet the role models, and then are introduced to different types of physical activity that they can then take part in outside of our program. So we're really focusing on being like a connector, a collaborator, like highlighting all the different amazing opportunities that the girls have. But really, it's the amazing role models as well to show the girls that these are all the incredible women that are out there that you can look up to. And this idea that you can't be what you can't see. So if we start elevating our women and in what they do and in their careers, it allows girls to see themselves in their future of what could be.
That's amazing. And how old are the girls that are participating in the program about?
Yeah, great question. So they're primarily 8 to 14, but we also have opportunities for 14 to 18, and then our role models are 18 plus. And so then my job is, as the program director, I support the development and delivery of any events and programs across Canada. So if we're doing something new or doing something that we normally do, I'm involved in kind of like overseeing a team to how do we run this event? How do we outreach it? How do we communicate? What does the event look like? And then working with our communications team to actually promote it as well.
Amazing. And what do you think the benefits are for like young girls to be exposed to such women at such a young age? Like I know like the impact it could make, but I want to hear from you.
Yeah, for sure. So, I mean, I think it's interesting because when I reflect on my own experience, I never had a role model growing up that wasn't like my family, right? Like, or someone in my family or like a cartoon character. So I think it's the idea that there's this lack of exposure for role models for young girls. But what we've seen is that it's important because it allows them to see the different options and futures that they have for themselves, but also to see women in leadership positions, to see women breaking barriers, to see women not living up to gender stereotypes that the world doesn't need to exist around. It's women in different sizes, different types, different careers, different sport opportunities. And it's really breaking that mold of these, really old ideologies of what women should do, which is not the case. Like, women are capable of doing so many incredible things in sport, through sport, with sport, outside of sport. So it's to show these girls that, especially at a young age, that these are all the amazing women that are out there. The world wouldn't exist without women. Like, we're a very key component of the world. So
who runs the world?
Exactly.
It makes me think about someone who we interviewed recently. I don't know if you know her. She might not have made it all the way up to Canada, but her name is 𝗚𝗯𝗿𝗃𝗀𝗃. She's actually someone that came out of nowhere in Israel about 4 years ago. She won a marathon, like the fastest race,
Wow.
like out of nowhere. Nobody knew her, and she's like a mom of 5, and she decided like out of nowhere that she wanted to like run professionally and really like commit to her running, and she's doing so much like activism and just like changing the way people see here religious women in the country, because usually like we're used to a stereotype where religious women are home with 5, 6, 7, 8 babies, and they cannot aspire to be a marathon runner. But she's like breaking all boundaries and trying to compete in the Olympics now, and so forth. So I see over here in Israel this type of personality changing really like the world, like how people see her persona. It's amazing.
And I will say too, like if that's what women want, I think that's the thing, is like the world has taught us that we should only be one thing and do one thing only, and that we have only a certain reason for existing. And if that's what some women want, that's okay. But the more you expand that horizon and show the different opportunities, it allows women, like exactly to this role model you're talking about, is you can still be a mother and do amazing things for yourself and in sport and whatever, which is one of the really beautiful things as we build more opportunities for that.
Right. We have a question that's very relevant to this, so I'm going to post it now. Tamar asks, I love all the work you're doing with programming and bringing inspirational role models to women. What are some of the most memorable role models that you featured? What has been your favorite event?
Ooh, that's fun. We've had so we did an event last year in December where we had this panel at the end, and we had 5 or 6 different role models on the panel. And it was so cool because they all came from different lived experiences and different backgrounds. We had Sarah Douglas is a Canadian women's sailor. She's also a Black woman. And so it was just cool to see like a sport that you don't really hear about too much, but also someone who is a young woman of color in a sport that's primarily known as being a very white. And she's so young, well, not so young. Sarah's just young. I think she's in her 20s. She's fantastic. We had a woman firefighter from Calgary.
That is so cool.
Yeah, like just like cool things. Like she was so badass, incredibly strong, like was into CrossFit, and just like she was amazing. We had an Indigenous woman from Canmore who was a skier growing up and now is like a dancer and is a stunt woman and an actress. So I'd say, and there was a few more, and I'm going to forget them. So please forgive me if they ever listen. They were amazing, and I thought that was so cool. But I think when it comes to my favorite event, I have 2 for both similar reasons. We did one in Ottawa with a foundation called the 𝗚𝗯𝗿𝗃𝗀𝗃 Foundation, and it was a completely free event to girls in the city that they worked with to recruit. And it was girls that lived in like high priority neighborhoods, so neighborhoods that were primarily like low income, racialized. And we brought over close to 700 girls together for the day.
Wow.
And it was just like in that, there was over 50 role models. They did soccer, they did wrestling, they did football, they did cheer.
Wow.
Just so many things. Actually, no, that's my favorite event. It was just like, it was amazing to see.
Wow. I wish I would have been there to see as well. So at the moment, you're pursuing a master's in the Faculty of Kinesiology and Physical Education. Can you talk a little bit about your research? What is your research about, and what are some of the findings you have discovered with this research?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned I went back to school because I was frustrated. So a lot of the reports and data, especially in Canada, that talks about girls and women, puts them into just 2 big groups. And it kind of makes the assumption that like all girls go through this and all women go through this, especially growing up in Scarborough, especially being the daughter of immigrant parents from Guatemala. My peers, myself, I didn't feel like we were represented. So I went to school to do research on that. So I'm just wrapping up actually my data collection. So my thesis is looking at race, gender, and age, and specifically the experiences of racialized women ages 18 to 30 in movement-based opportunities in Scarborough. So I'm talking to young women of color that are between the ages of 18 to 30 that live or and work in Scarborough, and that I want to hear about what movement has been like in their life. It was really hard leading up to the interview phase because you have to do all the reading and the back work and all this fun stuff. But I've talked to 17 women so far, and it is just both very amazing and frustrating. They're just such wonderful women. It's beautiful to hear about, you know, their religion, their culture, the culture from back home, how it maybe impacted what types of movements they experienced, and then sometimes some of the negative experiences they had as being young women of color. So it's like amazing to hear how resilient they are, the things that they've overcome. But then it's so frustrating to hear the experiences that they've had and the lack of support or opportunity and things like that. So my hope is, and there's so many things I've discovered. I think safety is a really big concern so far from what I've heard. This idea that Scarborough being so diverse, you know, you experience one thing in Scarborough, but then when you leave Scarborough and you go elsewhere and you find that it's primarily white, is that it can have a very different impact on the young women's experiences. And that as you get older, some of them have had, you know, less opportunities to be active and less time. Some have more involved, but your mindset on why it's important to move is very different than when you were younger. It goes from like having fun being a primary focus to more about like health, and especially mental health and physical health, and kind of like this opportunity to have a distraction or release from like your everyday. So it's really interesting. I can't wait to finish I'm looking to interview 20 women in total. So I have an interview tonight and then looking to schedule 2 more. And then I'm going to go through all the data and write up, you know, a thesis, like a whole book basically, but then also share the reports and findings with different organizations, the government, policymakers, and just say like, this is what you need to do is you need to talk to the community. You cannot make assumptions on their behalf.
Right. Have you found that some women, as they get older, like you said, they move from having like fun with movement, but more also to a part that's not so healthy, maybe more like to dieting and aesthetic goals and like looking a certain way and so forth, rather than going for the health like focus?
I think almost, I'd have to go back, but I think almost every woman spoke about a point in their life where that was the reason. And it sounded like it really did happen between the ages of like 16 to maybe their early 20s. And it also depended too, and I think kind of, Sarah, to some of our earlier points, as well as when we're talking about gender stereotypes and kind of what this idea is that people believe of what women should do, is some of that also came into what women should look like. And, you know, we live in 2 different countries right now, but I guarantee you we're still seeing similar messaging and visuals.
100%.
Like on what a woman should look like. And so a lot of the women that I talked to spoke about how they're so aware of that, especially right now during COVID, where it's in Canada, you know, where a lot of us are in lockdown, we're just looking at screens. And so you see so much more. Yeah. And the stuff we see on TV, which like sucks, but like, you know, the Kardashians are so popular and they have a certain body type. And so women believe that's what you should look like. So yeah, like it's a lot of them, if not all of them, brought up how there was a point in their life where movement was about losing weight, about trying to be skinnier, about looking this way. And some had external influences beyond media, but like family members saying things about, you know, you should be thinner, you shouldn't be this big, being weary of being too muscular. And I think that's another big one that I'm sure like we'll get into that in a bit too, but there's a lot of, it just sucks. Like we have so many messages their way.
For sure. I know it happened for me for a long time, maybe like I want to say maybe from the age of 18 to 30 even, I was just like focused on kind of like the diet culture like stole like the love of movement for me and like took it away, and it took a lot of time for me to like separate those. Like movement is for health, for me to feel good, for my mental health, for these endorphins to feel strong, to feel like a badass. If I want to diet, if I want to slim down, fine, but it's something else. It has nothing to do with movement. Anyways, mostly has to do with nutrition from my point of view, you know? So like
Yeah.
I want diet culture to stop stealing movement away from all these women and girls.
I agree.
I have a question. What are some of the most common challenges that you find these women face when it comes to being active and participating in movement-based activity?
Yeah, great question. It really did vary from person to person. One of the biggest things that came up um, was commuting, like getting to places to be at.
Mm,
Um, Scarborough doesn't have a really great transportation system.
mm,
We have public transit and buses, but a lot of people talked about how downtown you're so connected. There's buildings everywhere, gyms everywhere, there's stores everywhere. Where Scarborough is much more of like a neighborhood, so you have to it takes 10-15 minutes to walk to a convenience store, so it's going to take that much longer to get to a facility. But then on top of actually finding a facility that offers movement is the cost. So you're looking at
right.
commuting, you're looking at distance between where you live to where the place is, you're looking at cost, and then lack of women's only opportunities.
Mm,
And there are some women that are comfortable in mixed gender spaces, but there are some that are much more comfortable in single gender, so just being in women's only spaces. But then if they did have women's only, it was only at certain times for shorter periods. And I think especially in COVID, there was a small handful of women that talked about how it was so easy for them to find a way to be active while they were at home. But a lot of them talked about, when they were like on a team working towards a goal as a team, or they were training for something, that they were so used to a routine. And then in COVID, you have no
mm,
routine. Yeah, and then I think too, if you have one bad experience, can really be detrimental to a woman's relationship with movement and physical activity. So I mean, if I was to wrap it up, just to summarize, I think it's time, distance, cost, location, and accessibility to it. Like those are the 5 big things that could stop someone from being active.
you should send all these women to our community. We'll hug them with warmth and strength.
I
And
love
we have
it.
so many trainers posting workouts and so forth. And like I think we will welcome them with great honor.
Amazing.
So you are the coach of a women's soccer team. Can you talk a little bit about your team, about being a coach, and how has this experience impacted you?
Yeah, so I coach a women's soccer team at the university. So it's our university is interesting because the University of Toronto has 3 campuses in the city, one in
Mm,
Scarborough, one in downtown Toronto, and one outside of Toronto in Mississauga, and they're
mm,
pretty far apart, like a good 45 minute to an hour drive apart. So we have different levels of competition that you can play as a soccer player, as a student. You can play as a varsity team where you play against other universities and colleges across Canada, across the city. You can play representing the campus at 2 different levels, where you play against the downtown campus or the Mississauga campus or other. Yeah, like anyways, and then you can play at the campus against like your friends. So there's a lot of options for soccer. So
that's amazing.
yeah, it's really great. So I coach one of the women's teams that represents Scarborough as a whole. And it's the same team that I played for when I was in university.
Oh,
It's a lot of fun. It's probably like it's a very quick season. It's probably anywhere from 10 to 15 games the whole year. It's very cool. I love it. I miss it. It's been a year and a half since I stepped on a soccer field and coached. For me, it was really important because that experience changed my life and my university experience. So I wanted to give back. And also I had never had a coach that was a woman. So I wanted to go back and be a woman's coach. So I've been coaching for maybe like 6 years or so, maybe even 7. It's amazing. It's a fun mixture. The team I coach can be a mixture of girls who have played forever to girls who have only played for a few years to girls that are looking to play for the first time. So it's a learning curve, but for me, what's really important is to make sure that you're building community on the team. The women have an opportunity to learn, to get better, and to just move and to teach them to be healthy and to be like good people.
Right.
I take some of them and bring them to like fast and female events or like my girls program to be able to be coaches. So I want to teach them like you can also do so much with being an athlete and with being on a sports team. I mean, I think the experience has impacted me so much because I've been exposed to so many different young women and their own lived experiences and stories and barriers. And
so interesting.
Yeah, it's lovely. And my hope is that I play like a small part in their journey, but I've also been, I like it. One of my favorite things where I know I've kind of like made an impact with some of these young women is when they come back to me and they ask me to be a reference for them to go to, medical school, for them to go to school, for them to get a job. And I think that's so important is we help each other, we build each other. And it's one of the best experiences I've ever had.
Honestly, I'm sure you make such impacts on these women and the girls, and they'll like remember you forever. Like I remember my basketball coach, like one of my favorite people, like, like these team sports really like make you like create this togetherness that is like that you never forget. So
Yeah.
Amazing.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit about the Girls and Women in Motion group? Why did you feel the need to create such a group, and how has it impacted the females in the group?
Yeah, absolutely. So I mentioned earlier that when I was doing my undergrad degree at U of T Scarborough, so I was doing my bachelor's degree, that I started running a community program. So I found out about this organization called Motivate Canada, and they were recruiting young women to be female physical literacy facilitators. So basically, they wanted to come in and train us on why physical activity was important, what it meant, and especially for young women. And then they trained us and said, okay, now go start a program in your community. So I think I was,
wow,
that was very cool. I think it was in 2014. So I was in my early 20s and I was trying to figure out what I was going to do. I was originally going to do it at the university, but then I met someone from a local Boys and Girls Club, which is like a community center that provides free programming, who heard that I was looking to run this program and said, do you want to run it at our center? So I said, yeah, let's do it. So I ran the program for 2 to 3 years. And it was just girls. They were between the ages of 14 to 18. And it was supposed to only be 8 weeks in the summer. But then it went so well that I kept going for 2 years and running it like every season. And it was primarily young girls of color. Like it was a very strong presence from young Black girls. That community is very filled, especially in the area that I was, with the immigrant population and the Black community as well. And so I was having a great time. They were having a great time. And again, it was that idea that I was helping them with their outside life as well. So it wasn't just about movement. So we were talking about careers, applying to schools, going into high school. And then I thought, nothing like this really exists in Scarborough. So I got together with a few friends and said, I want to start an organization where this isn't just a program, but it's something that we can offer different programs and also offer opportunities for different ages. So I think it was in 2018 that Girls and Women in Motion kind of was born. And since then, we've done a couple things. We've done women's only events. We've done women's only soccer, women's only drop-in soccer, girls only soccer, girls multi-sport, girls only events. And really lucky, it's all free to the community. And if there's
wow.
Yeah, it's like
cool.
Very much the goal is to provide accessible opportunities. And there's not a lot that happens in Scarborough. So, I saw the gap. I wanted to fill it. And I had the people and I had the equipment. So we fundraise, we apply for grants. I'm really lucky to get like access to free space, so I don't have to pay for the soccer fields and things like that. And so we just got a grant earlier this year where we're working on building a mentor program for young girls and women, where they are going to write like letters to each other, like a pen pal program, and then meet up once a month. So I think it's impacted girls plus the young women and coaches that are involved. And the young women are some of the women that I coach that now are coaching younger generation. So it's very fun.
I was going to ask, how do you find the mentors? But you basically find them from all the other activities that you do.
I force them to come with me, but they like it. They like it.
You get a lot of connection through all of this.
Yeah.
We want to bring awareness to the health benefits of having muscle on a woman's body. So research has shown that maintaining muscle mass helps increase your lifespan and live a better quality of life. So what are some of the physical benefits you see of being a strong woman?
Yeah, absolutely. I've never been like small or like, skinny in the way that many people would kind of deem as being very small. And like I played soccer. I have very strong legs, big legs. I mean, I'm also from like my family's from Central America, so I have like the Spanish body to some extent.
Woohoo, go
on my
girl.
team. And I love lifting weights. I love lower body stuff more than anything. I love deadlifts. I love squatting. Like I love being able to see muscle definition. And I think it's kind of back, Sarah, as we were talking earlier, like those stereotypes of what society's been telling us women should or shouldn't do. And I think building muscle and muscle definition is something that there's like clash conversations on. Like some people believe that women shouldn't be muscular, and others are like, no, they should be to some extent. But I think there's so many benefits. I mean, I think there's the benefit of just being able to be strong and live like a healthy and active lifestyle for the rest of your life. And when you kind of look at the ingredients of what it means to be healthy and active, it's not just about cardio. Like cardio is an important part of it. It's the ability to like move for long periods of time, but strength training, it supports your heart health. It supports, your bone health, your mental health, all these great things. And especially as for someone who's involved in sport, is these are also the things that help you get better at whatever you're doing. But if you're not involved in sport, it helps you get better at your day-to-day life, like being able to pick up the laundry, bring in all the groceries, like garden, go for walks. As young women, if you choose to have children or be around young children, like being able to carry them for long periods of time. And building muscle is also, people don't see it this way, but it's also something that's going to help you when you're older to be able to get up and out of a chair, up and off the toilet, like
totally
reach for the top shelf. Like these are things that, what you look like, it can impact that too, but it also impacts your overall experience.
Longevity.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, there's a direct correlation between longevity and having muscle on your body.
Yeah.
So, So I've seen it myself, like in the last few years, or I'm going to say like 3-4 years, I've been slowly but surely being obsessed with CrossFit and building muscle. And everything is like just a lot easier. Like I used to like how do you say it? Like think twice before like picking up something that fell on the floor. It's like, oh man, I need to squat now. But now it's like so much easier. Like I could play Lego with my son squatting for like 15 minutes. Nothing like bothers me anymore. It's like I can carry very heavy groceries like from the grocery store. I don't need to like, everything is very close in Israel. It's not like in Canada. Like I can walk to the grocery store for like a kilometer and walk back with like heavy groceries, and it doesn't, matter. Like really, it feels good being strong and being able to do things like yourself.
Yeah, I agree. I think too, my partner and I really love gardening. He's a firefighter, so his job is very physically demanding. But when we garden, it's not like it's not like I want him to do the hard stuff and I do the easy stuff. Like we do these things together, and it like I can do this stuff because I pay attention to my physical health, because I like strength training, because I've been an active person. And my favorite thing is when we go to the store and I need to buy bags of soil or bags of mulch.
Yeah.
And like I used to work in garden centers, and Sarah, that was my favorite thing. I would work in the garden center. Someone would buy soil or mulch. I'd be like, great, just pull your car around. And they're like, oh, you don't want to call one of the guys from the warehouse to help you?
I know exactly what you mean. I have like a soil thing I can't show you now. Does it? No. Yeah. And behind me, there's like this huge bag, and each time they're like, I'll help you with that. I'm like, I don't need your help.
Exactly. Exactly. I'm like,
So
I might be able to do a better job than you can. Like I can pick this up. I can do this. Like, don't worry. So I love that.
I also love that scenario. It's one of my favorites.
Oh my God.
Have you seen like changes in the women around you after they started incorporating movement in their lives, especially like mental or like changes like confidence changes, etc.?
Yeah, for sure. I think, when I think of the soccer team, I think of like the tryout. Okay, this is the perfect example. So tryouts happen, we have tryouts twice a year, September and January. But the September one is the hardest because if these girls don't play soccer outside of the university, the last time they played soccer was in March. So that's April, May, July, August. That's 5 months where they maybe didn't have any movement other than like going for walks. So they come back, and the first tryout, they're dead. They're running, the squatting, the movement. But it's great because then once the tryouts are over, they're on the team. We're training once to twice a week plus playing. You see how their stamina goes up. You see as we're doing strength training, like you see that confidence in themselves. They become more confident. They're stronger. They're better players. They're more awake. But then for so many of them, you see that they start to fall in love with movement and that ability to move and do different things, that they then start, going to the gym more, doing just other things,
right?
Sport. And I one of the things I love and I don't do enough of, but I used to love like obstacle course races, like mud runs and things like that. And I've taken quite a few people to do them with me. And you also see like this idea of they didn't think they could do it beforehand. And I did it with my girls program. And that was my favorite experience. These girls had never run, hated the idea of doing long distance, hated the idea of mud. And then they did it where they thought they couldn't. And even just the endorphins right after that hype, where they're like, wow, I did something I couldn't do. It's something that it changes their mentality. But then I've also seen so many of them are still active. So many of them are still involved. So many of them have played with me outside of like the school as well. So you definitely see them. And it's not always the case, but they recognize the value. It's just sometimes you got to keep giving them that push to like, we can do it together. And that's where I think, especially with women who lived Israel, building a community is so important, especially like for women. So there's a statistic that says that for boys in sport, competition is their number one priority, and then community is their second one. But for girls in sport, community is the number one priority.
Wow.
And it's competition. So I think it speaks to the fact that it's when you do it together, when you have a community, that's really what encourages you and will keep you going.
Totally. I can see that with myself. Like once I started like joining the CrossFit community, I became a lot more consistent. Like we're like a group of 4 girls that are like, addicted to the class, and we see each other like every single day. It's like that community that even through COVID, we like came up with like Zoom workouts and continued that community feeling,
Yeah.
Yeah, and I do also understand like that addiction to like overcoming some challenges. So once you like start doing something that is like you overcome something that you thought you couldn't do, like you start looking for other challenges, and you want like that surge of endorphins to continue, and you keep on growing and growing, and it's amazing.
Yep, absolutely.
So you're a proud daughter of immigrants from Guatemala. Can you can you educate us on how this background has shaped your career and professional trajectory?
Yeah, absolutely. I think you know, there's so many things that you don't reflect on or are aware of until you're older. Like you don't notice them in the moment. I was the first of three. Like I was the eldest child from my parents. And when they first came to Canada, I think they didn't speak any English whatsoever, and they were learning. So my first language was Spanish, and then I went and I learned English through school. And it's been interesting because when I reflect back on like my sport experience to my brother, so my brother's 2.5 years younger than me. And I don't blame my parents. I think it's just the byproduct of the culture back in Guatemala. But my brother played high level baseball. He was always in sport. He was in sport the whole year, whereas I only played soccer primarily in the summer and at school. You know, there was money for his sport, but it was hard to find money for mine. And like, again, growing up in Scarborough, I was surrounded by different cultures and races and ethnicities. And I had a few friends that were also from Latin America, but it wasn't until I was really in university that I started to realize that, you know, being the daughter of immigrants is very interesting. It's a privilege in itself because you know that your parents have made sacrifices to leave home, to leave a place that they were comfortable with. And Guatemala was not like, it was very dangerous. Like my dad's stories of like getting shot, almost getting kidnapped, of like growing up with a gun in his back pocket to protect himself and his family. And you meet him now and he's like the nicest man you'd have. But it made me kind of reflect on like what I said yes to, what I did, what I didn't do, like the experiences with my friends and their families. But I think as I got older, it also made me realize that there is a lot more barriers, resistance, and like issues that come your way. Like no one's path is like easy. All of us have to work hard. But I think it's also important to acknowledge that there are different people, communities, races, ethnicities, like just groups of people that have to work much harder than white men, for example. Like,
right, yeah.
The system, the culture very much benefits them. And if you're kind of outside of that, and for me, like one of the things that means so much to me is like, I don't know of any other, like I don't meet really many other Latinas that are in the sports sector working in you know, in this field that have a title like mine. I don't think there's a single other, I think there's one other person in my department that is from Latin America. Like, it's just been so interesting. So to some extent, it also kind of like motivates me, like to be that person. I think of my sister in particular. So I have a younger sister, and she played sports since she was 4. Like she went into soccer at 4 years old.
Amazing.
Yeah, like it was awesome. She played at a more competitive level. And so for me, you know, it's important for me to remember where I'm from and to be really like grateful for the opportunities I've had, but to also fight for those that are coming up behind me, like to make a path that's easier for them to, you know, speaking of like role models and representation, to feel like there are people that come from different countries, whether they are from Guatemala in specific or other areas of Latin America or other, you know, countries, that you can see that these are things that you can do. We might have to work harder, but like, let's work to build a more welcoming community where you can see yourself in these opportunities. So like I did it for my sister to some extent, like she's definitely had a easier upbringing, but it is really important to me. And I think it's always going to be important to me moving forward as well, to like just always remember my culture and like where my family came from and the sacrifices that were made to get me to where I am today.
Amazing. I think this question is related. Let's see. I read that you identify as an intersectional feminist. What exactly is intersectional feminism? Does it play a role in girls and women being active in fitness?
Yeah, absolutely. So intersectionality is a term that was coined by Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw in the States. And Crenshaw brought the term about as she was working in the legal system and was reading up about, it was a law case, and I believe it was something to do with like the automotive industry. And there was women that were involved in a legal case that were Black women. And I think they were suing against discrimination in the workplace. And the legal system had said you can either choose to fight for discrimination as being Black or as being women, but not as Black women. And Crenshaw kind of came back and said, you have to look at the whole picture. Like
Right.
they're not just Black and they're not just women, they are Black women. And that means that there's more considerations and different layers of discrimination and marginalization and oppression that these women face because they're navigating the day-to-day as being both Black and women. And those are both groups that often have stereotypes that have different like concerns and issues and just all the things that you have to kind of battle. It's sexism and racism.
Wow, it's so interesting. Okay.
Exactly. So intersectionality is basically, I like think of it as like puzzle pieces or like a flower with different petals. It's what makes you who you are. So it's your race, ethnicity, class, citizenship, gender, sexuality, body size, geographical location, like all these things that make you who you are, but they're also things that impact the way you navigate through your day-to-day life in work, personal lives, so forth. So when I think about it, and when I talk about intersectional feminism, it means feminism through an intersectional lens. So it's being able to be aware of these different social identities, race, gender, age, class, and so forth, while also fighting for feminism, which is all about, equity, equality, like working for women to be able to have these same opportunities as men. So now it's not just feminism through one lens, basically, where feminism is looking just at gender. And most of the times, like feminism was also most of the times looked at just white women.
Right.
So to be able to look at different women, different ages, different body sizes, different races and ethnicities, religion. So for me, when it comes to that role, what role that has in girls and women being active, again, it goes back to kind of my thesis too, is that if you just look at girls and women in physical activity, you're failing them because there's so many things, more things that make them who they are beyond just being a girl and a woman. So if we're saying, okay, well, girls and women aren't active because they need a space to do that, and then you create a women's only or a girls only space, that's a great first step. But, where is the space? Is it in a safe location? Is it accessible? Is there a cost associated with it? Who in to lead it? If I have a young girl who has a mobility device and she's in a wheelchair, is there a way for her to access this place? Do you have a ramp? Do you have elevators? Do you have variations? Like it's a lot of work, but it's peeling everything back and thinking about who actually can access this space, like who actually is able to walk in and be a part of it. And it's so important because it's really about representation and consideration, and it's about safety and inclusion. So it's a lot, but if you do that, you're creating more spaces and opportunities for women that historically have not been able to have access to them beforehand.
With all this research, have you learned about, let's say, new things that you should adapt, like the sports, your programs to, like depending on like culture or like you said, different things? Like I'm pretty interested of like some different examples that you had to like adapt yourself. Like, oh wow, I didn't think of that. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. So at Fast and Female, for example, we normally, the way our programs and events worked is we worked with a community partner. So for example, a soccer organization in Calgary sends us an email and they're like, we want to run an event for you. We go, great, we figure it out, and the partner gets to decide if the event is free or not. So then let's say the event isn't free. So already, obviously, geographical location, like that's, if you live in the area, then you have access to the event. But then if you're charging, that oftentimes means that not everyone actually has access to it. And so as an organization, as we're talking about what we want to do, we're figuring out how we actually get people to have access to our programs. And so this is what was interesting with COVID, is because we went virtually, we were really cross Canada for the first time. Because before COVID, we did a lot of events in Alberta, in Ontario, in Saskatchewan and Nova Scotia. Like those were the 4 provinces we were in the most. But then we were like, well, why aren't we going into these other areas? But it's, it's like, have we talked to them? How much do our events cost? I think too, Sarah, kind of to your question too. So what's been interesting is, for me personally, when it comes to planning programs and events, I like to think of 3 buckets of knowledge that I think are the best way to plan things. The first one is reflecting on your own experiences. And so it's like me and my team, I also have to think about who's represented in my team. So what do we already know?
Right.
The second one is what does research tell us? So looking at reports, data that comes out that can help inform best practices. But then the third one is working with the community directly, because you can't make assumptions. So even in my research, I'm talking to women that are Black, that are South Asian, that are Muslim, that identifies different things, but these women don't speak on behalf of that entire population. So if I speak to one young Muslim woman, she might have great insights on considerations when working with young Muslim women, but she doesn't speak on behalf of all women that are Muslim, because there might also be young women that are Muslim and Black, that are Muslim and disabled, that are Muslim and wear hijabs, that are Muslim and don't wear hijabs. Like these are all the different things. And one of the things that I will share with you that came from my research that was a really quick tip that I thought, oh my God, that's such a great point, is I did talk to a young Muslim woman who wore a hijab, and she said to me, she was a soccer player. And I said, what change do you want to see? Like how can we make the environment better for you and for others? And she said, a lot of sports teams that I play with and organizations that I'm a part of, when they give you a uniform or a shirt, it's a t-shirt. And she's like, so every time I get a t-shirt, I have to wear a long sleeve underneath. She's like, if you could just give me an option, she's like, give me an option, a t-shirt or a long sleeve. I'll order it. Like, just give me the option. She's like, no one's giving me the option. And I thought, oh, that is like, you know what I mean? That is so small. That is so simple.
Yeah, we have the same like kind of modesty rules in the Jewish religion. And I completely had the same problem with her when playing basketball in college. So I know where it comes from.
Yeah, just so interesting. So it's good to be able to speak with the community as well. I have 3 C's that I like to work with too: co-creation, collaboration, and compensation. So co-creation is you bring the community to the table; they're a part of your team, and you work to build something together. Collaboration is working with organizations. Co-creation and collaboration are about working with others. It's not you make assumptions on their behalf, but you bring them in and then pay them for their time. I think that's a really important thing too, especially in Canada and the States right now. These conversations are very, very frequent and recurrent since last year, since the murder of George Floyd. In the States, there's been a lot more conversations on anti-Black racism and anti-racism as a whole, Asian hate, just all these things. So it's good that we're having these conversations, but it's also good to kind of take that approach moving forward and don't assumptions, work with the communities as well.
Amazing. I personally had something, maybe I wish this type of work was done while I was in college, for example. I'm really good at basketball. I need to admit this. And I made our college basketball team, but I don't know if you know,
Amazing.
But in the Jewish religion, we have the day of rest, the Sabbath, which is on Saturday. So from Friday sundown to Saturday sunset, it's a holiday for us every week. Basically, I made the team, but all of our games were on Saturdays. So I just couldn't play any games. I was just left out from it. So there was no point of me continuing to pursue being in the team. I joined a few practices, but I got too discouraged after or frustrated, so I just dropped out. So if that research could have been done at my time, give me some opportunities, maybe half of the game not be on Saturdays, it would have been awesome.
Oh, I hear you. That's a great point.
So okay, so if you could give the community one simple wellness tip that they can implement today to help them along their journey, what would it be?
I think one of my biggest things is that we need to move away from we need to reframe our thinking to just be about moving our bodies. Like, I think a lot of times, and they're great. Like, I'm a sport person. I love sport and I also love fitness, but we kind of categorize movement in different ways. You know what I mean? Like, we say, this is what it means to be an athlete and be in sport. This is what it means to be in fitness. This is what it means to be in dance. This is what it means to do yoga. But these are all about moving your body. And so I think a lot of times when people are thinking about their health and looking to like either get in shape or just be more active, they think that the step is, oh, I need to join a sports team or I need to hit a gym. And those are great things as well. Like, I highly encourage them. But if we start thinking about movement first and things about just like sustainable movement as well. So like in COVID right now, you spend your whole day in front of a screen and then you go do a workout for 1 hour. That's great, but that's not sustainable. Like, it's about moving your body as often as possible. So going for morning walks, doing a midday stretch, like looking at your steps, like trying to get a workout in, like it's about using our bodies to move. And I think that's so important for us to think about, because when we start reframing the way we think, we actually then strengthen and better the relationships with our body and movement. So if we just focus on movement first, then we can start saying, okay, now I want to strength train. Now I want to sports. And I think, that goes hand in hand with like just breaking stereotypes and barriers when it comes to girls and women. Is like, we can do a lot and like we are very capable of doing these things. So yeah.
Amazing. So walk up the stairs instead of the elevator.
Yeah.
Just move.
Exactly.
Okay, so I would love to give you the opportunity to talk directly to our members about anything that is important to you that we haven't already covered.
I think, so many things. What do I want to say? I said a lot. I think taking an intersectional approach is really important in everything that we do. I think that's amazing. Moving your body. I think breaking barriers and stereotypes and like being your own role model, but then at the same time, you get to be role models to others. I think that's so important. Supporting each other, building that community. Yeah, like I think that's like one of the things I say to my soccer players is I just want them to be good humans. Like, I would love for them to be amazing athletes, but if they take the experience that they have on the field and through training and they're able to go back and like coach or teach or train and work with the community and just be good role models and support each other, like that's, I don't know, that's a whole bunch of things in one. But I think that's what I want to focus on.
I agree. Yeah. So we're at the end of our interview. I've had so much fun talking to you and I learned so much. You're like amazing.
Thank you.
Any last words of inspiration and motivation for our beautiful and strong community before we end this?
Yes. There is no such thing as failure, but just opportunities to learn and reflect. So
that's a good one.
I think that's applicable to everything. Like, like I mentioned, I love strength training. I started strength training again, probably about 2 months ago. And I think of how disappointing it is that I'm not squatting or deadlifting as heavy as I used to be able to do. But I know that it's like a step in the direction. So if I fail, if things are too heavy, I get mad when I'm skipping and I hit the rope hits my leg and I literally like will swear. I get upset when I'm playing soccer, when I'm doing things every day. And even though I'm mad in the moment, I think, okay, this is not failing. This is an opportunity to learn. This is an opportunity to reflect. What am I going to do different? And skipping is something that pops in my head for some reason. But I know when I'm skipping and it hits my leg, I will get so mad. And then I go, okay, deep breath, let's do it again. And then I go slower and then I build up. And I think this is about movement. This is about your day-to-day life. Is like, first of all, everyone fails. And second of all, like, if you fail and you take it as an opportunity to learn, you will never look at failure as failure again. You'll always look at opportunities.
Yeah, on the other side of failure, there's growth. So
exactly,
you need to, like, strive for failure.
Exactly. Yeah, it's risk taking, right? It's like you take risks so you can learn and so you can grow.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Gabby. I've had so much fun. Thank you for being here with us.
No, thank you, Sarah, for reaching out. I appreciate it.
I hope we keep in touch.
Absolutely.
Bye, Gabby. Have a great night. Or
Thank
day.
you.
Bye.
You have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.